Welcome to Molecular Diagnostics, An Eye Toward the Future, a special edition podcast series produced by the Scientist Creative Services team. This series is brought to you by Thermo Fisher Scientific, a world leader in serving science. Their mission is to enable customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. Whether their customers are accelerating life sciences research, solving complex analytical challenges, and improving clinical research workflows, Thermo Fisher Scientific is here to support them. Scientists continuously develop new assays to fill unmet diagnostic needs. While methods such as quantitative PCR have emerged as essential tools in molecular diagnostics, scientists developing and administering these assays still must overcome technical challenges. In this podcast series, the Scientist Creative Services team talks to experts about their experiences designing and implementing assays and protocols for future molecular diagnostics. Scientists commonly use qPCR applications in molecular diagnostics to detect pathogens, assess viral loads, or uncover mutations. While the qPCR assay itself may seem straightforward, other aspects such as data collection and security and following regulatory guidelines present challenges. In part 1 of this episode, Gloria Lam, the Associate Director of qPCR Software for Thermo Fisher Scientific, discusses concerns surrounding molecular diagnostic data collection, analysis, cybersecurity, and more.
Hello, Gloria. Thank you for joining me today. You have managed the qPCR portfolio for Thermo Fisher Scientific for almost 8 years now, so I'm sure you have a great perspective on what support scientists need when performing these assays. What are some common challenges that people might face when using qPCR, either when they're trying to develop a qPCR molecular diagnostic assay or when they're doing more routine testing?
In any given lab, there is a menu of many different tests that they want to run. And each of the tests can have different chemistry, different reagents. The thermocycling protocol can be different. If the lab is trying to manage a menu of different tests like this, it can be very time consuming, maybe very error prone, pretty complex for them to remember to do the right things for the specific test. Now for development, their challenge is that there is a long process for assay development. How do they accelerate that process and make sure that all the data that they generate be managed centrally and efficiently so that when they are ready to file for submissions, for example, they have all the data ready to go. And when the test is developed, they need to provide the end user the protocol that they need to follow is called the IFU. So how do they provide an IFU that's easy to follow so the laboratory can run the test effectively and efficiently?
These tests generate large amounts of data. So what are some specific needs that research teams have for collecting and storing molecular diagnostics data and connecting the instruments to their LIS, Laboratory Information System? Do they have specific concerns related to data security?
The qPCR instrument usually would be the one who generate all the data, and the data are typically tied to the specific run. A run is a batch of sample processed together throughout the workflow. The lab will have to figure out a way to marry those data back to the sample. Second is, imagine throughout the day, you're doing so many runs, right? You're processing so many samples. Another challenge that the lab will have to face is to manage those data in a centralized, secure manner that is conform to the compliance requirements that they have to meet. Data security is most critical when it comes to performing qPCR, even though the qPCR instrument itself do not capture sample information. They typically reside with the LIS system. It is important information that you don't want to lose track of. A lot of the time, we know the barcode from the sample at the beginning, and then we know the end result. When it comes to the validity of the test result, we need to know what happened throughout the test workflow. And that's why we are hoping to help our customers to solve data security considerations to make sure that the data is fully protected and is compliant to HIPAA and other standards that they need to follow.
Quality control, or QC, of course, is essential for any assay to make sure that the data are reliable. What is your perspective on QC in molecular diagnostics?
QC is important for molecular diagnostic because it does have a downstream impact on diagnosis. So we want to make sure that the result is accurate and is reliable. Do you have your internal process controls functioning properly? Do you have your process being done properly? Looking at your positive control, your negative control on the plate that's being run together. Is that being run correctly? We want to make sure that we can streamline that as much as possible because it does take a lot of time and effort to inspect those QC data for each run.
How do molecular diagnostics laboratories typically handle QC today?
If they're using a manual workflow, they will have to look at the instrument software, the different data visualizations, and apply the QC rule that are specified in the IFU to make that assessment to say that this QC looks fine or this QC doesn't look fine. Failed it manually. That takes a lot of the time. Sometimes they will export the data, put it into a third-party tool to assess the QC. So those tools can go from highly developed software or Excel, but nonetheless, it will require them to take an extra step to take the data out and do the QC analysis before they can go ahead and review the rest of the test result.
And finally, why do you think it's the right time for scientists to upgrade their qPCR software?
This is the right time because qPCR is growing even more as a technology adopted in the clinical environment. In the past, we have been focusing on making our qPCR technologies as high performing as possible. And we would like to expand that to the workflow. How do we enable our customer to use the qPCR technologies in a more efficient way? That we believe can be delivered through an advanced qPCR software that cover the upstream workflow as well as the downstream, like automating the QC and automating the interpretations of the test.
Thank you for listening to Molecular Diagnostics and Eye Toward the Future, and thanks again to Gloria Lam from Thermo Fisher Scientific. Catch part 2 of this episode to hear Fernando Biles from Thermo Fisher Scientific about an innovative qPCR software designed to streamline molecular diagnostics. To keep up to date with this podcast, follow The Scientist on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe to The Scientist's Lab Talk wherever you get your podcasts.